let's go ahead and go out to, how about California? We'll talk with Allie. I think it's Allie. Yes, hi.
Hi, Dr. Andrew Farley. I had a question regarding the teaching about the judgment of believers individually. First, when I heard of this concept, it kind of set my soul on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I was never at peace after learning about this, and it's interesting that those who teach it assume themselves as the ones who are receiving the rewards and never question, maybe I'm the one losing rewards. So they never have the intuition to research it more because it never feels conflict for them.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, they usually justify their stance through three verses. One is 1 Corinthians 3, that you've covered it pretty much many times.
Yeah.
One is 2 Corinthians that says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that Paul is defending his position in front of the Church of Corinth. But the one that I have questions about is in the book of 1 Peter, where he says, for you call upon the Lord who judges each person's work impartially. Could you explain that, how that passage fits in with the grace message?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we're talking about First Peter and Peter's statement here. Obviously there's the end of the age when things burn up. We read that elsewhere, as you know, burn up like wood, hay, and stubble. And then other things endure. So false messages burn up, false gospels burn up, deeds of the flesh burn up. Only the fruit of the Spirit endures. So it doesn't surprise me one bit. Peter says here in chapter 1, he says, since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent awe or fear. So this is saying God's judgment of all things is impartial. And I certainly believe that. I'm not saying there's no such thing as God judging the works that we engaged in. I mean, clearly, whether it's a false message, a false gospel, deeds of the flesh, God's not going to celebrate sin. I think the bottom line, the clarity that people get when we talk about judgment and rewards is not that there's no judgment at all, and it's not that God is ignoring works. It's just that, number one, hey, you as a believer are not in question. Your identity, your righteousness, your fate, your future, your security, and even this word rewards has been pluralized. Everybody's putting an S on the end of it and saying, now, I hope I get 10 rewards and maybe you'll get 11, and you over there, you didn't do as much, you'll get 4 or 5. Billy Graham's going to get 28, etc. So they're imagining rewards plural. And so that's where we get into talking about stacking crowns on our heads and, more square footage in our mansion. And we basically get materialistic. With a little bit of heaven stamp on it, a little bit of Jesus stamp in our theology of materialism. And so we're dispelling that myth. We're saying, no, when it comes to crowns, Jesus is our crown of righteousness. He is our crown of life. He is our crown of glory. And when it comes to rewards, it's actually reward singular, not plural, but singular. And the Apostle Paul says we can enjoy the reward of the inheritance. Now, I love that phrasing because how do you get an inheritance? You don't earn an inheritance. Somebody dies and leaves it to you. So now if we've realized our sins are gone, they're remembered no more, they're removed as far as the east is from the west, then I'm not going to be judged for my sins. So second, if we realize, well, we all enjoy the crown of life, the crown of glory, the crown of righteousness, which is Jesus, then we put that over to the side. So no fear about my sins. There's no condemnation. No fear about differing amounts of crowns, because that's a myth. And no fear about rewards, plural, of being embarrassed or humiliated over the number of rewards. No. I get an inheritance, and so do you, because Jesus died and left it to us. So we put all those myths to the side, and we believe the corresponding truth. And then you say, all right, though, there's still a judgment. So what's happening at that judgment? Well, there's a couple of things happening at that judgment. First of all, the world. The world is being judged. And Paul tells the Corinthians that we will be involved in that judgment, that we will judge the world and we will judge the angels. So just keep that in mind, that God respects you and honors you enough to include you as a co-judge. You are a co-heir with Christ and you are a co-judge with God. So that's one thing that's happening at that final judgment. We, together with God, we are judging the world. Now, the second thing that's happening at that judgment is that everything is revealed. That is, everybody's works are revealed. The unbelievers, the believers, all works of every kind are exposed. Now, that doesn't mean that you're then threatened. There's no threat to you. Look at you. You're the righteousness of God. Look at you. You're perfectly forgiven. Look at you. There's no condemnation. You're seated at God's right hand. This isn't about you, but it's about the works. It's about the works that have been conducted since the foundation of the world. And a lot of those things are going to burn up. And yet a lot of those things are of God. And if they're of God, then they're celebrated. We can all celebrate and applaud what God's Spirit has done in and through various people. That doesn't mean that they're leveling up like in a video game. That doesn't mean they get a bigger mansion or more crowns or more square footage or more jewelry. It just means there's two kinds of works. There's dead works and living works. There's works that burn up and works that endure. And that is perfectly logical and normal. I mean, first of all, why would God celebrate sin? He wouldn't. And why would sin endure? It wouldn't. But doesn't the work of God endure? Of course it does. And are we just going to bury our heads in the sand and ignore what He did for thousands of years? Of course not. In heaven, we'll be celebrating all that Jesus did throughout history. And that is exactly what Peter is talking about. God judges impartially the works. It's not about judging His children. It's about judging or assessing the works and celebrating the beautiful fruit of God's Spirit.